Hello everyone, welcome back to the Let's Talk Commander channel. I am Reckoning. Today we're going to be doing a deck tech video and we're going to be looking at Omnath, Locus of Creation. Now before we start, I'd like to do a disclaimer. This deck tech is not a budget deck tech, and the strategy I went for this is really unique. I've been looking at a whole bunch of other Omnath deck techs, and they've all been like food chains. I wanted to make this really stand out. So the cards in this deck, you're probably going to be questioning why I'm running these, but at the end of the video, I'll explain them. Omnath, Locus of Creation, is a red, green, white, blue 4/4 legendary creature elemental with the ability of when it enters a battlefield, you draw a card, and it has landfall, which reads, whenever a land enters a battlefield under your control, you gain 4 life. If this is the first time this ability has resolved this turn, if it's the second time, add red, green, white, blue to your mana pool. If it's the third time, Omnath deals 4 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker you don't control. So, what's very unique about this Omnath is obviously its landfall ability. Its landfall ability isn't infinite and cannot be infinitely exploited compared to every other landfall ability. So what's very unique about this is that people that are building a deck on it, they have to think of a way to recur Omnaths because I've checked the ruling of it. Everyone's saying that the ability technically resets because if it gets bounced back or blinked because it counts as a new creature. So with this deck, there's also a sub theme of bounce and the main theme of landfall, of course. Now, to start off with the 99, we're going to be starting with creatures. First, we'll talk about the Monodorks. We'll have Evanescence Pilgrim, Birds of Paradise, Bloom Tender, and Sylvan Caryatid. Now, these are just standard ramps just so you can get to Omnath faster, and so you're able to do more things on your turns. For extra land creatures, as in creatures that let us put down extra lands, we'll be running Azusa Lost but Seeking, which is a no-brainer for any landfall deck. Dryad of the Elysian Grove, Knight of the Reliquary, Mina and Den Wildborn, the Oracle of Moldiah, and Wayward Sword. For creatures that can use the landfall ability would be Admonition Angel, which would be a great form of removal, being able to exile permanents whenever a land enters a battlefield under your control. Emeria Shepherd, which is great to get non-land permanents from your graveyard whenever a plains enters a battlefield under your control, which also works great with Dryad of the Elysian Grove, so because it makes all your lands every basic land type. Lotus Cobra for extra lands, which is very nice. Well, extra mana. Morog Fury of Akum, which is one of the newer landfall creatures from Zendikar Rising, which gives extra combat steps and it beefs up our creatures, which is very nice. Of course, we have Omnath Locus of Rage. We have Royal Elemental, which can be very disruptive because you'll be stealing your opponent's creatures. Tatiovis is great because you get to gain life and draw a card whenever a land enters the battlefield on your control. And we have Tunneling Geopede, which it just pokes the opponent while whenever a land enters the battlefield, which with all the ETB triggers we can get from lands, it's you might honestly just kill your opponents with it. You guys are probably wondering why I'm not running a card like Rampaging Baloths. I will talk about that once we get to the enchantment. Now, to support our bounce theme, we have 3 creatures: Deadeye Navigator, Shrieking Drake, and a card that I surprisingly have not seen in any deck tags. This is why I think it's going to make this deck a bit more unique. When I first saw this Omnath, this was the first card that I thought of. and it's Chulane, Teller of Tales. So, what's special about Chulane is his ability. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card, then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield, and it comes in untapped. And it has a tap ability where you could tap it, paying 3 mana of any color to return target creature you control to its owner's hand. So, what's great about that is because since we have that minor bounce theme, say we cast Shrieking Drake, and then we finish the ability, we put a land down, draw a card, and then we just, with the Shrieking Drake's ability, we get to bounce a creature to our hand. We just bounce Omnath, we cast it, and then we get to do the landfall, draw a card, whatever again. And then there's the other ability of just returning target creature you control to its owner's hand. For extra value, we also run Maelstrom Wanderer, Omnath, Locus of the Royal, Risen Reeve, Thassa's Oracle, and Titania Protective Argoth. Now we're going to be moving on to the artifacts. For artifacts, to start off with Artifact Ramp, we'll be running, of course, Soul Ring, we'll have Chromatic Lantern, and Arcane Signet. For artifacts to protect our important creatures, we'll have Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots. And for artifacts that will support our strategy, we'll have Amulet of Vigor, Cloudstone Curio. And we'll also be running Crucible of Worlds for the lands that are in our graveyard. For enchantments, we'll start off with the enchantments that help with our lands matter landfall strategy. The first enchantment will be Colony Heart Expedition, and the second will be Zendikar's Royal. And for the enchantments that help our main combo strategy, we have Intruder Alarm and Nature's Revolt, which I will go over the combo at the end of the deck tech. As for instance goes, we mostly run a lot of tutors. Eladamri's Call, Enlightened Tutor, Harrow, Long-Term Plan, Mystical Tutor, Shared Summons, and Worldly Tutor. For Disruption instance, so to slow our opponents down, we have Dovin's Veto, Flusterstorm, Heroic Intervention, Krosan Grip, Pact of Negation, Path to Exile, Silence, Swords to Plowshares, and Valakut Awakening, which that's not really disruption, but it can help us draw cards, which in turn, I guess, could help us draw with disruption. Draw a disrupting card. As for sorceries, for our ramp sorceries, we run Farseek and Cultivate and Skyshroud Claim. For extra value sorceries, I guess you could say we run Idyllic Tutor and Walk the Eon, so we could take extra turns infinitely. And now, as for the land base, we run 6 forests, 4 islands, 3 plains, and I will just be putting all the unique lands up on the screen. Okay guys, so welcome to After the Deck Tech. So now we're going to be talking about one of the combos in the deck tech. For this combo, we're going to need the card Nature's Revolt for 3 generic and 2 greens. It's an enchantment and it reads, all lands are 2/2 creatures that are still lands. And the other card we will need is the enchantment Intruder Alarm for 2 generic and a blue. Creatures don't untap during their controller's untap step. Whenever a creature comes into play, untap all creatures. And we will also need Cloudstone Curio, Shrieking Drake, Chulane, Bloom Tender, Knight of the Reliquary, and if you want to throw him in there, I guess you could have Omnath, but really you can have any of the landfall abilities that create creatures. So you can have Omnath, Locus of Rage, you could have Zendikar's Royal, or you can even have the GOP one that pings your opponents. So how this works is, let me explain actually. So with Nature's Revolt, making all your lands 2/2 creatures, all lands 2/2 creatures, and Intruder Alarm, you could actually, if you wanted to, because this is more of a creature based deck, if you wanted to run more, if you wanted a more spell slinger type of deck, you could replace Intruder Alarm with Jeskai Ascendancy, which whenever you cast the non-creature spell, you untap all your creatures. So that's another way to technically generate infinite mana, as long as you can give all your lands and creatures haste. So that's also why we run Maelstrom Nexus in the deck, or Maelstrom Wanderer in the deck, excuse me. So with Nature's Revolt, all of our creatures are 2/2s, or all of our lands are 2/2s. And so with Intruder Alarms, it reads whenever a creature comes into play, untap all creatures. So what we could do, Tulane, Cloudstone Curio, Knight of the Reliquary, they're really just extras of this combo if you want to draw more cards, place down more lands. But pretty much the main combo of this is just, well, it's not a main combo, it's just a combo that helps. But you have Shrieking Drake and you just cast it over and over, tapping all your lands, generating infinite mana, bouncing Shrieking Drake to your hand. Or what you could do, if you have Knight of the Reliquary with Nature's Revolt Intruder Alarm out, if you have Zendikar's Royal, or again, any of the landfall abilities that creates creatures or pings your opponents, you could have Knight of the Reliquary. You tap it, you could sacrifice a forest or plain and search your library for a land card and put it onto the battlefield untapped. And so you could do that infinitely or until you're out of lands in the library and generate as many elemental tokens that you want. Now, with Omnath, if you want to do the combo with him and do it 10 times to deal the 4 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker you don't control, so you'd have to have 10 lands enter the battlefield. You could have Tulane, and when he enters the battlefield, you do the Tulane stuff, but Tulane will untap, and you could bounce Omnath, cast him again, and so it's just really unique because it's not a food chain combo, which I personally think it's a very cheap way out with at least this. Yes, it's very easy to disrupt, but I think it's more fun. And it's very unique because we don't have Paradox Engine anymore. So you really have to work your way around stuff. And so that'll be it. Thank you. I hope you enjoy the deck tech. Please leave comments down below if you see any other combos I don't see. And tell me how you would build the deck. Bye bye.